Rommel would certainly try to attack before the end of August, avoiding the strong defensive positions to seek success in maneuver. Eighth Army should encourage Rommel to strike prematurely, but rely on its defensive strengths to counter this. Finally, Eighth Army needed to build up its strength, train its troops hard, and prepare to launch its own offensive in the northern sector, but not before the latter part of September. At first, Auchinleck dismissed Dorman Smith's appreciation as being insufficiently aggressive. Dorman Smith then challenged his general to read it again and list the military mistakes made in it. Auchinleck could find none, and had to reluctantly accept its logic. On the evening of July 30, Whitehall was informed that Eighth Army was going on the defensive, while it built up and trained for an offensive later in the year. This message probably sealed Auchinleck's fate as commander in the Middle East. But on August 1, Auchinleck produced his own appreciation, which was much more offensively minded than Dorman Smith's earlier one. Accepting that Eighth Army could not mount a large-scale offensive until at least mid-September, there were ways it could carry the fight to the enemy and maintain the initiative. The object spelled out in Auchinleck's appreciation made this clear. Object: while Eighth Army is on the defensive, to cause the greatest possible loss to the enemy and to disturb his plans. Auchinleck envisioned this pressure being applied to Panzer Army Africa through a series of raids mounted by mobile elements of Eighth Army, but also using the Long-Range Desert Group, the Royal Navy, and the Desert Air Force. As Auchinleck made clear, our policy should be to harass the enemy by all possible means, moral as well as physical, so as to keep him stretched and impede his preparation for attack. All this while keeping ourselves concentrated. This appreciation has often been ignored by military historians. It is important, though, as it shows that Auchinleck, while obviously tired, had not lost the offensive spirit. Barr wrote, "Even taken in isolation, this appreciation proves that Auchinleck and the senior commanders of Eighth Army were certainly not looking over their shoulder to consider further retreat, but instead were planning to cause as much damage and disruption to the Panzer Army Africa as possible." The commander of 13 Corps, Lieutenant General Strafer Gott, also produced an appreciation on August 1. Drafted by Gott's two talented principal staff officers, Brigadier Bobby Erskine and Major Freddie DeButz, Gott's appreciation predicted the likely shape of Rommel's next offensive and how it could be countered. The Ulam el Halfa Ridge was the key. Ulam el Halfa and Gabel bin Gabir point like fingers to southwest and provide all the observation and a good going to the coast road. These features, and particularly Ulam el Halfa, are vital for any advance down the coast to Alexandria. They are also vital to us for holding our present positions. Gott's appreciation predicted that Rommel would attempt to capture the Ulam el Halfa Ridge before cutting the coast road and driving for Alexandria. Gott, who knew the terrain better than any other serving British officer, was certain that this would be Rommel's only viable course of action. There are many possible variations in the details of such a plan, but it is the only one which he could carry out with his present shortage of infantry if he is making Alexandria his objective. Barr has called Gott's appreciation a vital document that predicted almost exactly the scale, scope, and objective of Rommel's next attack in late August 1942. Barr concluded that Gott and his staff, rather than Dorman Smith or Auchinleck, or any other British commander, should be given the full credit for this. This is certainly true, but all three documents were important. Dorman Smith's appreciation prevented any more half-baked attacks that squandered precious trained infantry and convinced Auchinleck that a defensive posture best suited Eighth Army in August 1942. Auchinleck's document showed how a defensive posture could still keep the enemy off balance and retain some semblance of initiative. Gott's appreciation accurately predicted Rommel's next attack and how best to counter it. All three, and another appreciation prepared by Auchinleck on August 2, provided a solid foundation for Eighth Army's future success. Despite what Montgomery would write about developing a master plan for the next two battles of El Alamein, these actually originated with Auchinleck and his corps commanders. Some of Auchinleck's senior staff officers deserve a share of the credit, too. To counter Rommel's next attack, Eighth Army altered its positions in the southern sector. In the north, the positions remained unchanged, with the 9th Australian Division holding the coastal section, including the El Alamein railway station, and the newly won sector of Tel El Isa. To their south, the 1st South African Division occupied the El Alamein Box, while the 5th Indian Division held Ruwayasat Ridge. These three infantry divisions made up 30 Corps, under the command of Lieutenant General W. H. Ramsden. To the south of Ruwayasat Ridge, the 2nd New Zealand Division began the construction of the New Zealand Box. The western edge of this box covered the 5 miles from Ruwayasat to the Ulam Nile feature, and it constituted the southern end of the Alamein position. To the south of the New Zealand Box, the armored cars and mobile gun columns of the 7th Armored Division patrolled the broken desert as far as the impassable Katara Depression. The New Zealanders and 7th Armored formed 13 Corps under Lieutenant General Gott. Close behind the center of the line, where it could assist either corps, was the bulk of the British armored formations. These were being reorganized by Auchinleck and classified according to the types of tank available. The 22nd Armored Brigade, with all of the Grant and some Crusader tanks, was the heavy formation. The Valentine tanks were placed in 23 Armored Brigade, while 4 Light Armored Brigade was equipped with all the Stuart Honey tanks and the leftover Crusaders. Some 300 Sherman tanks were on their way, but would not arrive before the end of August. Facing 8th Army across the no-man's land of El Alamein was the Panzer Army Africa under the command of the now Field Marshal Erwin Rommel. It consisted of 1 German and 3 Italian corps. Down to just 150 German and 50 Italian tanks at the beginning of August, Rommel interspersed his German units amongst the Italian formations while holding the static position around El Alamein. The strike power of his Panzer Army always remained the Africa Corps, consisting of 15 and 21 Panzer divisions and the 90th Light Division. In August, Rommel received some much-needed reinforcements. These included the remainder of 164 Light Division, which had been arriving by air since June, the Ramke Parachute Brigade, and the Italian Folgori Parachute Division. As Rommel built up his strength for another attempt to break through to Cairo, the army that blocked his way was going through a clean sweep of its senior commanders. On August 3, Winston Churchill and the Chief of the Imperial General Staff, CIGS, General Sir Alan Brooke, arrived in Cairo clearly determined to fix the problems in Britain's only active field army. Brooke had been appointed CIGS only in December 1941. So far, he had little pleasure in the job. Described as hardworking, perceptive, strong, utterly professional, and ruthless, Brooke knew that 8th Army had serious problems, and that these began at the top. Auchinleck and other senior officers were anxious about the visit, as indeed they should have been. After a year in command under Auchinleck, 8th Army had suffered over 100,000 mostly Commonwealth casualties, 100% of its original strength. There was little to show for these heavy casualties, a string of defeats, 2 sacked Army commanders, and an army that had lost its confidence after finally halting Rommel on the Alamein position. As the New Zealand official history colorfully described the visit, it was known that Churchill had brought a supply of bowler hats, and was here to decide on their allocation. On learning of the pending visit on July 31, Chink Dorman Smith wrote to his mistress in Cairo that, "I feel the Auk's time is numbered." It was an astute assessment.